Welcome back to the FloTrack podcast, FloTrack at gmail.com. I'm Kevin. He's Lincoln. We are recording this a day after, less than 24 hours after we saw two world records broken in Valencia, Spain. We watched it live with Paul Chalimo and reacted in real time. You guys can check that out on the site if you'd like. Lincoln, we have time now. You can get out all of your reactions that you didn't get a chance to articulate during our live show.
Sure. Yesterday was exactly what they wanted to do when they organized this in Valencia World Record Day, because both races produced world records. As I told you, I was more surprised about Gaday's 1406. We look at somebody who hasn't been dominant in her craft in the 5,000, and all of a sudden she's running a world record. I think it was one of those things. It was a what is it called? Not a litmus test, but a Rorschach or whatever that's called test. You can see into it what you want to see into it. If you are a shoe truther, if you don't like the light wave light technology, well, you look at somebody like Gaday running 1406, beating a all-time great, not beating, but surpassing the record of an all-time great like Tierney Baba, and you say it's the technology, it's the shoes. Because Gaday, yeah, she's a medalist, but she's not like she wins every time out in the 5,000, far from it. And then all of a sudden she's lopping 5 seconds off of the world record. That was, for some, I think, another indication maybe that this era is just, it needs to be discussed as just being wholly different from the 2000s of which these records had come from. I am finding myself closer to that than I ever have been, and I blame Gaday for that. No, I don't blame her, but yesterday's meet looked like a science experiment because of the wave light technology. And I know Cheptegei has said in the past, and I'll get into his performance, well, the lights don't do anything for the runners. It's just for the viewers to see where it's at because you can't see it on the ground. I tend to call BS on that. I think they could see those, how consistent they were on those all night long. I tend to think that they were helping the runners significantly. That said, they still had to run the time. I am not as worried about the shoes. I think the shoe stuff is overblown. I'm not going to worry about any of that. You know, what are we going to talk about? Who won the U.S. Open in golf compared to the 1960s because the clubs have changed? Things change. These aren't cheater spikes. I'm done with that. I just think the wave light technology is, we would have seen much faster records in previous eras, in my opinion, which is fine. It's fine that we didn't have that, but we would have seen faster records, in my opinion, if the wave light technology had been around and they could have used it. I think it's a tremendous, tremendous advantage. All of that to say, last night was very, very impressive. The athletes still had to get on their 2 feet and run these performances. I was just stunned by the 1406, not as much by the 2611. And as we all know, anyone who watched the watch party last night would have known I was disappointed by the 2611 because I now owe Gordon $26.17. So anyways, that was a long-winded intro there, but just a couple takeaways, things I noticed watching that yesterday.
Well, that'll do it for our show, guys. FloTrack at gmail.com. Thanks to Alon for producing. You ran through all the topics, Lincoln.
Yeah, I know.
You basically, there was like 10 times when we could have stopped there and dug in. I'm going to push back on your science experiment because you said you're closer now than you have been before. So let me push back. You throw some arguments at me and I'll tell you where you're wrong here.
Well, the lights, listen, I think there's plenty of people who could have broken world records in the past. I don't know who and where, but you have the lights. It takes away that mental strain to keep going, to know where you're at when you're by yourself. It takes that point away. Look at Cheptegei yesterday. He ran the last 5,000 by himself. Now he ran 13:03. He was in incredible shape, but anytime that there would have been fatigue where maybe he got distracted and you really have to hone in on, like, I've got to work a little bit harder to run 62s and 63s. Those lights were there to be like, that's my marker. I know where I have to stay. You know, this.
Okay, hold on. Okay, let me jump in. Okay, well, let's focus on Gaday because Joshua Cheptegei ran 12:51 on the roads in a 5K and there were no lights out there. So I think we can separate him. Did it help him a little bit? Perhaps. But let's look at Gaudet, because she did have a good big drop off in time.
Yeah.
She got pacing from Beatrice Chepkoech, a 844 steepler, who probably, if she ran a 5K herself, would be, what would you say, in the 1420s, perhaps, right?
Sure.
Is that correct to say? So she's one of the 4 or 5 best 5K runners in the world. She got her through 3,000 meters. And did she get her through 3,000 meters on pace because of the lights? Perhaps. But once you're to 5 to go, this is the same argument we had when we were talking about Cheptegei breaking the 5K record before. It's all out at that point. It's like foot on the gas. The pace is locked in. The pace is ingrained. It's only your fitness. She's not checking, the lights, worrying that she's overcooking it. Now, could you make the argument that the pacing lights helped Beatrice Chepkoech be on pace early on, which then helped, obviously, the person she's pacing, Gaudet, stay on pace? Absolutely. But then you're talking about just an advantage that comes from having an effective pacer. And you're right in terms of the spectator benefit, which I don't think we should overlook here. Track does not do enough things to help spectators. And I found myself, I was looking at splits during these races, and you were on live with me, so you know this. And I was like, oh, are they on pace? Or are they not? What split did it hit? Oh, okay. That's all out the window. If you're a split person like I am and like to do the math in your head, your job is now obsolete. It's been outsourced by the lights. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think track should do things that make it easier to consume the product. And it was way easier to know what was going on in this race because they had the lights out there.
Yeah, it's fun. I just think it needs to. It's a wholly different sport. I look at Gaudet's world record. It doesn't have the same reverence, and I don't know if she would have broken it before, but it strikes me as one of the most irrelevant world records in the sense that who is going to be scared of Gaudet when she shows up in the Olympics in the 5,000? It's not going to be Safan Hassan. It's not going to be Helen Obiri. I just don't think, and I don't know if it's credit to this just being a perfect atmosphere to break a world record. If it was what you said, Tirunesh Dababa's 1411, despite the fact that it survived for 12 years, it was weak. Yeah. And maybe that's to do with the fact that there weren't a lot of attempts. But this this doesn't carry any reverence when you come to the championship level. No one is scared of her because she doesn't have a kick. So to me, that tells me if a world record holder is not striking the fear in her opponents, then I think she got some considerable assistance from this wavelight technology. To which a point. Yes.
No.
Are you think is Gaudet is she a gold medal threat now, or is she a gold medal favorite now?
No, but she's playing to her strengths. Chelimo brought this up before even started. She's a grinder. He said she doesn't have a good close, but that doesn't mean she can't hold the world record. There's nothing against that fact. Mo Farah's best time in the 5,000 was never near the all-time list, but he was good in those championship races. I think what you do, and I do this to a certain extent too, so I'm not just saying this is you, but we hold these old records out as these bastions of running immortality that can never be touched because names like Bekele and Dababa are on there. And we don't think for a second that in 15 or 20 years, people are going to say the same thing about Cheptegei or the same thing about Gaudet, who, by the way, is only 22 years old. So she could develop a kick throughout her career. Is it strange that probably the third best 5,000 meter woman in the world right now is a world record holder? Yes, I'll agree with that. But if you look, like I brought up to you before, look at those IAAF scoring tables, and you can take them for what it's worth. But the women's 5K, as it stands, was the worst of the distance records. 1,500, steeple, 10,000, marathon. There's just not a lot of people who are running 5K time trials in this setting before. So you put that all together, and it's not surprising at all. But I just think we romanticize the past immensely. We don't talk about how Roger Bannister had a pacer get lapped intentionally so he could pace him in the middle of the race. Right? We don't talk about that. We don't say that ruined the sport back in the 50s. But for some reason now, when we continue to innovate, yeah, shout out to Papa Shrike, who's watching all the way from Springfield, Missouri. we don't really leave any room for not just innovation, but the idea that, oh my goodness, could the women's world record in the 5,000 improve by 5 seconds over the course of 14 years? Heavens, no. There must be something wrong with that. Like, it's kind of an absurd proposition. Like, track and field was supposed to end the moment that Tirnish Dababa ran her 10K, or track and field was supposed to end because we've reached peak performance when Bekele ran his 10K. That's just not how human beings work. Now, if she ran 13:30, obviously there's a limit to where I would go on that. But her knocking off a few seconds based on what she's done before, based on what we've seen women do in the 15, the steeple, the 10,000, and the marathon is not surprising.
Yeah. Obviously this record is not going to last 12 years. I'm willing to, even though I don't have a good history with bets, I'm willing to wager a significant amount of cash on that. That said, that's probably now it's going to last for 100 years. It is just strange, and maybe she becomes this, and maybe this is the beginning for her of her becoming an all-time great. We're just so used to track and field. There doesn't seem to be any fluke world records. Now, maybe we could go back and look, but you look at the names attached to world records, it tends to be names who have dominated at the championship level as well. So for Gaudet to break it for me was like a sign, like what is she doing with this world record? And I know it was just one attempt, and maybe Savon Hassan could run 13:55. Maybe a Helen Obiri could as well. But it makes me wonder if we're going to start to see, to a lesser extent, track records in the distance events become more like swimming world records, where it's like they get broken several times in a year. Now, like I said, not to that extent, but if there's going to be plenty of meets, if every meet besides the championship meets, and probably some diamond leagues as well, is going to have wavelight technology, I think we're going to start to see more and more of this. Now, you can only take so many world record cracks, but other athletes are going to want to get in on this. You know, it's Savon Hassan is not going to be satisfied with her 1 hour world record. She's going to say, I need this 5,000 world record from Gaudet. I can't have her running 14:06 and my PB still being in the 14 teens or whatever it is. I just think we're going to start to see more cracks at it. I just think it takes a little bit of a credibility away from the 5,000 world record, to me, from the world records period, that you have an athlete that's never won a gold medal, that's doesn't seem to be the best at her craft, all of a sudden is the fastest in history. It's the technology that's turning this on.
I just think we find a way in track and field to cast doubt on every world record, regardless of what era it is, for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. And some of that is well-founded based on the history of the sport. And some of that, again, is due to the fact that we hold these prior decades in such reverence, and we think, oh man, the audacity of someone to break that, there must be something nefarious going on. Keep in mind, Tirnish Dababa's 14:11 is 12 seconds faster than her second fastest time ever. Mm-hmm. These things do happen in big jumps. You're right. Hassan could go out there and break it. You know, you're right. Helen Obiri could go out there and break it. That's the same thing we could say about the women's 400-meter hurdles. It could get broken over and over and over again. Same thing with the men's 400-meter hurdles. Events have these eras, men's marathon, where one person or a group of people combine to move the sport forward, and then it stops. And then there's stagnation for a while for a variety of reasons. Maybe the talent isn't there. Maybe the opportunities aren't there. Maybe the situations didn't line up. And then we move forward. That's just the way track's been. I mean, I'm thinking over the past 10 years, the life cycle of a lot of events has been like that. I never, in 10 years, I never would have thought, man, the men's shot put record might be in play. But here we are. The men's long jump isn't where it was before. Remember that summer when the high jump record looked like it was going to be broken, and then it never happened? You had two guys up there. This just happens all the time. I think we're retrofitting the lights and the shoes to fit a narrative like we don't want any other record to change. And I think that's tough. Now, does it help, a tiny bit? Does it help a little bit? Sure. But again, then we have to get into the cost benefit analysis. Is it worth not having that? Is it worth depriving the fans of that viewing experience because it's gonna give them an advantage? And again, all the lights are doing is basically Bram Somming a rabbiting job, right? Bramsom was always amazing, and he works for this Wavelight technology company, which is amazing. I think he just like took his DNA and injected it into some light bulbs or something, and there was some weird science experiment. But like, all you're doing is basically saying, what would the best possible rabbit in this situation do? And taking out the human element to pacing. But we've already introduced pacing as a viable option in record attempts. So this was inevitable, and I just don't. I'm surprised, I guess, at the backlash to it, because again, those last 5 laps, I think she's just going, as Mike Smith would say, gas, 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 all the way in. I don't think she's getting much advantage at that point. I think the advantage is in setting the table and making sure that the pace is right, and then she's set up on the right course.
But I mean, that's still an advantage, though. I mean, it's an advantage for Chepkoech when the early laps were a little bumpy for the lights to help regulate her pacing job. And so that's an advantage. Even if it's on Chepkoech's back, it's still an advantage that benefits Gidey.
Right. But then we could go back and say, well, man, when Tirnish Dababa was running, she didn't have an 844 steepler to rabbit her at all. She didn't have any help, right? You could just keep going back. I just, because it's one level removed in terms of it's helping the rabbit who's already helping the athlete, I have a more difficult time seeing as it's causing this huge problem. Again, is it worth the trade-off? This is all about trade-offs here. And I think from a viewing experience, it definitely enhances things. I just think with the shoes, it's like, the shoes were ruining the sport until they weren't. And I think the same thing's to be with the lights. We're just seeing 2 athletes take advantage of it right now. But I mean, Gidey ran a 14:23 when she was 20.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's not bad.
That's
fast. More than it's still fast. I just think of how badly she got smoked last year in Doha, and I don't know. It's not it doesn't sit right to me. There's nothing wrong with it, but I feel like I'm about to go.
Were you mad at Dennis Cometto's world record in the marathon? Were you upset about Dennis Cometto's
world record? A little bit, because I remember I had to cover it at like 2 something in the morning, but that's neither here nor there. I'm just wondering, in your back of your brain, truthfully, you're not thinking a little bit like, I understand you're a guy who likes to look at this and say, this is the new era and this is what it is, and let's enjoy this. Let's not take away from the sport with how much little enjoyment we already have, thanks to people who want to discredit every performance, I guess, like myself. But in the back of your mind, you're not looking and seeing this performance is just a little bit different than what we saw with Dababa due to the lights. And if you want to say the shoes too, I know you don't. It's different. It was run in different circumstances. So should we not look at it just a little bit differently? It doesn't mean an asterisk, but
no, I'm fine with that.
It's diminished a little bit, I think.
No, see, so different and diminished are 2 different things. Different and diminished are 2 different things. I'll admit that it's different, of course, because every era is different. Every era is having advantages. I mean, if we want to talk about spikes, what was Dababa wearing versus a woman who was running 10 years before? There was definitely advances in shoe technology and track technology as well, too, right? So different, yes, absolutely. Diminished, no, because this is how things evolve and get better. Again, women's long distance running is just going to get deeper and deeper, and the deeper it gets, the more of a pool you have for potential pacers, which means the better pacers you're going to get, which means they're going to be able to stick in longer, and their records are just going to get better and better and better. I mean, imagine if Bridget Kosgei, let's just take the most recent race, right? If they had pacers that went much longer, so that's going to improve too, right? That's going to be different. I mean, are we going to go back and say, hey, in Dababa's era or in Catherine Ndaraba's era, they didn't have as many people? Sure, you could say that, but that's part of the historical argument. That's why we have these debates about which one was worth more. But I don't think it diminishes it in any way, shape, or form. I think what you're doing is saying Gidey did it, ergo it doesn't matter as much. Whereas if Sifan Hassan did it, because we've already established, okay, she's a 351 1500 meter runner, then it's all of a sudden legit. And I don't think
those are the same.
I don't think that's right. Yeah, I don't think that's right. I think it's wrong, Lincoln.
Yeah, I get you. I still kind of believe that the wave light technology was a significantly beneficial, but perhaps, Kevin, perhaps the biggest technology that has changed the game the most, the way we view this, is Twitter. That I think that is the technology that's not getting enough blame here, because, like I said, I just want to be clear on this. I'm more on the side of the wave light technology being a significant benefit or help to these athletes than the spikes. I'm not I'm not a scientist. I didn't work on these shoes. I don't know exactly what went into them, but I think all that stuff is certainly overblown. And I know you agree with that there, because there's going to be technology changes. But in seriousness, though, I think the presence of social media and Twitter is what's making this a bigger deal
Well, so let
than
me ask you this.
it would be.
Let me ask you this though: if Safan Hassan was in this race, right, and she ran the
Yeah.
exact same time that Gade ran, would you say it's because of the wave light technology? It's because of the shoes? How different would your argument be, knowing that
Yeah,
this
that's
is
a
a
good
woman
point.
who ran? I mean, she ran 3:51 with no lights in
Mm-hmm.
Doha on the 1500, and then what did she close her last? I mean, did she close in 4 flat in that
Yeah,
10K
yeah,
in the
she
beginning of
did.
the championship? What would
No,
you
it's a
say
good
then?
point. It's a good point. Probably not to the extent that I'm criticizing this performance from Gade. But isn't that fair? I mean, she's lesser of an athlete. I guess she has every right to try to break a world record than anyone else. Um, you're correct. I would probably have less criticism. As I texted you yesterday, I think this women's 5,000 broke me towards the wave light technology. But it's also more nuanced than that. I still like to see it. I just think we need to
Yeah.
look at it a little bit differently. I'm not trying to be like, let's get rid of Mondo tracks, let's get rid of spikes, everybody go back to clogs and cinder tracks. Um,
Yeah.
but I just think it needs to be uh, addressed that this performance is different than what Tierney Baba did. But that
And
doesn't
I'm
mean there
not,
shouldn't be a world record. And I know you're not. I know you're not.
I'm,
I think we're
I'm,
closer to agreeing than we think.
yeah, it's more fun to yell at each other though. This is good. No,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
I'm saying is that, yeah, look at it differently, but I don't think it diminishes it. I don't think you just, because there are a group of people out there who they're throwing away Kipchoge's performances because they don't count. They talk about how Kometo's the real world record holder, which is
Oh no,
crazy.
that's stupid.
And
That's stupid.
and they're doing the same thing with the wave light technology of, oh, this isn't real, this doesn't count, which I think obviously is giving too much credit to the lights, but also not taking into account just the general progression of technology and the role that it's going to play in
And
in
that's fine.
pacing, right? In helping, right? In like all these incremental things, and we just didn't notice them before. We didn't talk about them before, but there's just this general improvement. I mean, because I think, yeah, if Sifan Hassan or Helen Obiri ran that time, everybody would be like, whatever. But I think Gade's just low profile. And
Yeah.
I mean, what's your opinion going to be on this next year if Gade goes and does win the 5,000 at the World Championships, or does win the 10,000 at the World Championships and beats Sifan Hassan? I mean, she's in good shape, right? She got second in that
Yeah.
Monaco 5,000. She lost to Obiri, but didn't. I mean, Hassan DNF'd in that race, so she's in good shape.
This comes down to, I like my world records to get gold medals before they break world
Old.
records. It's a little nitpicky, but listen, I feel like I've earned that credibility to just say I need you to do something before you break a world. No, I don't know. You're right. It will change. Maybe my take is poor. Maybe I have no shot now to invest in wavelight technology and they're not going to take my money now. I don't know. But we spent the first 30 minutes or so on this not talking about Joshua Cheptegei. Maybe we should
Well, he's in
get
it.
to
He's in it. He's part
maybe,
of this
maybe
conversation.
yeah. But he's won medals before, so it can't quite apply. No, this was another methodical run from Cheptegei, whatever, help from the lights notwithstanding. He didn't have a single lap outside of 63 seconds, or I should say 64 or anything above. Everything was 63 and under. And I don't know, excuse me, it was quite reminiscent to me of his 5,000 record, where it was just all
Yeah.
about consistency.
No, that's 100% right. It just was twice the race of the 5,000.
Yeah.
That was literally it. Obviously, it doesn't count in your mind because there was lights and shoes. So no, yeah, it was I mean, right after he ran 12:35, I don't think anybody said, other than Gordon, I don't think he's going to break the 10K record.
Yeah.
Now, some of us got a little carried away and said he was going to break 26:10, but
2 seconds away. Or no,
if you listen to
1.01 seconds away.
When Paul Chalimo was talking with us before that race started, you asked him which one was seen in higher regard, the 5,000 and 10,000 record. And didn't he say that Gebre Selassie said that he thought the 5 was harder?
Mo Farah said that the 5, he thought the 5 was harder. Yeah.
Okay. Still a good source.
Yeah.
He's better than us.
Well, one takeaway I had is Paul Chalimo's talking with a lot of guys. He kept like name dropping, which, I mean, you're going to have name drop abilities when you're Paul Chalimo and you've been around all these guys, but he seems to be chatting all these guys up. Well, when I was talking with Joshua last week, it's like, man, you're just like talking with these guys all the time, aren't you? Yeah. He's like, I guess went up to Mo Farah in 2017 and was like, which record do you think you can take? Mo Farah was being honest. He'd been like, none of them. I'm about the gold medals. I don't do records. Which is interesting because I would have thought maybe just because it's the longer distance, but 26:17 always to me was mind-boggling when you look at it, the fact that when guys run fast in the 10,000 in the last few years, it's in the 26:40s. So I would have thought this was the harder record, but like you, like everyone else, I was confident that the 26:17 would fall, and then he delivered with a 26:11, which is absurd. And I think he also, I feel like Chalimo said he had a conversation with somebody, I don't remember as far as something, that thinks it's eventually going to be in the 25s, which is disturbing. But there's an argument to be made. Which barrier will go down quicker, the women's 14 flat or the men's 26 flat? Obviously, the women are closer now, and I think that is the record. But in our lifetimes, we're probably going to see a sub 26, back-to-back sub 13s, which is just crazy considering how long it took. Because I think wasn't there like some stat that it was like it had been a certain number of years before since anyone had even come within a second per lap of Bekele's time. It's obviously hard to find fast 10,000s, and the wave light technology is recent. Those things contributed to this. No one coming close, but I left tremendously impressed with, once again, how methodical he went to this, and then to the fact that no one had really ever touched this before. Cheptegei is everything maybe negative I said about Gaudet is not true about Cheptegei. He's the best, and it's by quite a big margin.
Ergo, his record counts. We don't need to have any asterisks.
Yeah, it counts in that book.
Yeah. Well, look, I think you brought up a good point where you're like, man, there's years where we don't even see anything under 26:50. And I think what this hammers home is just how many times do you see the best people get in a fast 10,000 or a fast 5,000? Right. It's so rare. So when people try to take this stuff out of context and cast aspersions on the time, it's not really honest accounting, because it's not like world championships and Olympics are run under the best possible. This is not swimming. They don't hop in the pool and go all out in their own lane. There are tactical considerations, and they are not running all out 10,000s that often, especially anymore when it's really hard to find any world-class 10,000s in the world. I think 20, that time obviously is, both of them are ridiculous. But when I heard that, okay, well, if they think the 5,000 meter world record is gone, and he's going out at 13:05 pace, which was the goal, they're a little bit off that. But if they're going out at 13:05 pace, then this thing is gone. So I was never in doubt. He kind of reminds me right now of Kipchoge from before, where he's just locked in. He's just locked in, and there's no vulnerabilities at all in him. And it's obviously fun to watch. And man, that the 5 and the 10 next year are going to be pretty interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Just because I think Mo Farah just moved back to the marathon. Actually, he just found out Kipchoge lost, and he's going back to the marathon.
Exactly. I was one of the Mo go back to the track guys. Now I'm changing my tune pretty quick here. Mo, get away from Joshua Cheptegei. Avoid him at all costs. Yeah, it was.
Do you think? No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it was exactly what you'd expect he'd deliver after that 5,000.
Yeah, exactly. And That's tough when that's your expectation. I mean, he delivered, right? But he still had to go out there and, run 26:11, which is
Mm-hmm.
4:13 per mile pace for 6.2 miles. It is absolutely absurd. Which distance, and I can assume we'll come to a consensus here, but which distance do you think he is more beatable in? Do you think it's the 5,000 or the 10,000 as far as the championship level?
5,000.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that
I
that
think in
seems
the,
like
I
an
think
easy
in the,
pick. Yeah.
I think in the 10 he's got some options of how he wants to run it, and he can go hard from the gun, which would be ambitious. But if he has Kip Limo, his countryman running with him, perhaps they could work together. Or he could just dawdle the first five, and then he knows that he has the fastest 5,000 meter PB in the entire field. I think the only way he loses is if he lets it come down to a final 2-3 laps situation. But
Yeah.
that'd be strange to see.
Yeah, I mean, he could go out in 14 flat, and we'd talk about how impressive it would be if he closed in 13:03, let alone going out in 13:07. Now, I know
Yeah,
championships are a different game, but yeah, it just feels like he has full control. I know last year, that men's 10,000 was close. He had to
yeah.
kick the last 100, but he never gave up the lead. I don't think it was actually as close as it maybe had seemed. I think that was good practice for him. I just wonder, it's just going to be so fascinating. I mean, on one hand, is Mo Farah going to still have anywhere near the same abilities as he had in 2017 or his prime before that? And then two, does Cheptegei just try to blow him out of the water? I don't think he's going to try to break a world record. Clearly, that would be foolish. But does he try to run 26:30 and dare anybody to go with him? Because he could go out, quote unquote, tactically in
Mm-hmm.
13:25 and then come home in 13:0. And I would think he's just going to smoke everyone. Now, things don't tend to play out that way in a championship level, especially when you're doubling. But um, his times being so much faster than everyone else in both distances, it really gives him the opportunity to command a race on a championship level like I don't think we've ever really seen. And you look back on examples of Bekele and you think to the 2004 Olympic 5,000 final, okay, this is what not to do. And I understand you're not going to have an El Garouge level athlete or of somebody of speed in that 5,000, but I think the proof is in the pudding to not make it tactical, at least to the extent that you would normally see. So in that regard, it's how fast does he want it to be? Is it going to be all the way? I mean, it's not going to be 26:11, but is it going to be 26:20? Does he want to really ramp it up? Or does he just say, okay, these last 2 miles are going to be basically 4-minute pace and whoever can hang with me, good luck. It's fascinating not only to see if he can just dominate, but how he tries to execute that.
Was it you who said this last year that the distance races are more interesting when there's a huge favorite, or at least maybe not like a Mo Farah type favorite where you know that he's going to sit and kick, but like Timothy Cheruiyot going from the gun was fun. I thought Sifan Hassan going from the gun was fun. It didn't make the last 50 meters necessarily that thrilling, but it just pulled out these amazing performances.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was you. Maybe it was someone
I don't
smarter
think it
than
was
you.
me, but that's 100% correct. I mean, we felt the absence of Mo Farah last year in the 10,000. In that wasn't that hyped of a race. Now that was Cheptegei before he fully became Cheptegei, but certainly, yeah, it's much more interesting when you've got a king in there, right?
Well, I'm just saying from a tactical perspective, right? Cheptegei, people say, "Oh, it's not about the times," and it's not. It's about winning medals. But it is. It is fun when they put out a a full 10,000 meter race. It's.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it as much when a 10,000 meter race turns into an 800 or a 5,000 turns into a 400. I can just watch the 400 if I want to do that. So what I'm saying is the best strategy for Cheptegei is one where he makes it a 10,000 meter race, which is more fun. Same thing
Mm-hmm.
with Sifan Hassan in the 1500. The best strategy for her in the 1500 was, or Timothy Cheruiyot in the 1500 was to make it a full 1500 meter race. And that just, I think it just made a interesting race, even though those ended up being blowouts. It was cool to see those two just show their dominance in full display and not wait for the final 200 to go.
Do you think they should put the wave light technology in all races, and even when they're tactical, it allows the fans to see how tactical they are, and maybe they can boo them? Boo! The lights over there.
No, I think, yeah, I don't think they should put them in global championships for obvious
Mhm,
reasons. I mean,
mhm.
there aren't any pacers in there, so I don't think that would
Yeah.
be useful in any way, shape, or form. And the idea that, like, I mean, if you could pull it off, hell, do it, right? If you're willing to go after a world record in a championship race, you get the lights. That's fine.
Okay.
Go and do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Yeah,
if
I
you
like
can run
that.
that pace, if you want to put your chips in the middle of the table and chase the light when a gold medal's on the line, more power to you. But I don't think we're going to see them in every single race. I think we're,
No.
again, to bring it back to before, I think we're overweighting some of the performances for the past and underweighting what we're seeing right now because we're living in it, and it just gets grouped into this whole big thing. But Cheptegei and Gidey are special athletes, and history is going to bear that out.
It
Certainly,
is
we just
tough
need
though.
to
I think
be a bit more patient.
people, yeah, people around our age, those, at least when I started to really follow the sport, the Bekele and the Tirnesh Dababas were were so revered and so
Mm-hmm.
dominant that it is weird now to see these youngsters come up and break the records of our personal heroes, Kevin. It is it's tough. And walking to school uphill both ways was so difficult for me to now see my records of my childhood go down. It's a tough reckoning. No, I'm just kidding. But it is weird. It is a little strange to see
Mm-hmm.
these records go down by athletes um, that have just seemingly come on the scene.
A little bit different for Cheptegei, and I get that's what you were saying because Dababa won a world title in '03, and then 5 years later she breaks the 5K record. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes a little bit more sense because she's a name for 5 years before she gets the records. Gidey just has the silver last year. She's a lot younger, but the evolution of people's careers is different. Cheptegei, he's been on the scene for a couple years now, but wasn't multiple world championship medalist and Olympic medalist a couple times over before he did it. But there's a good chance those were the best races of their lives, and Joshua Cheptegei is in the shape of his life, and he's never going
Yeah,
to get
sure.
this opportunity to do it again. And he went and did it. And if these performances stand for the next 10 years and nobody can get them, even though the shoes advance, even though the lights are now 20 feet tall and flashing the entire time, are we going to say,
Holographs.
yeah, well, then are we going to say, well, Gidey and Cheptegei did it because of the lights? What when other people have
Mm,
had the same shot at it, or are we going to say because I feel like that's what kind of happened with the shoes, like the shoes were the shoes until we saw people have bad performances in the shoes, or not even bad performances, but mediocre performances.
yeah,
Or we
sure.
saw people like we went to the Olympic marathon trials, and yes, we had them in the men's race, but in the women's race, you had two of the top three not wearing them. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm big on confirmation bias over here, Kevin. So we ignore those types of facts. No, I don't know. In summary, I don't care about the shoes. The shoes don't make you a good runner. The lights, though, they might. No, uh, I think they take away a little bit of the strain of pacing. But hey, whatever. Bekele, he had a good run. I mean, like here, how many
Oh
cliches
yeah,
can I throw out? Records aren't meant to last forever. It's a different
I'm not.
era. Um,
It's true. We talked a little bit about Bekele's no good, very bad, horrible week, and
yeah, I mean,
it was bad.
people like me aren't going to forget how good Kenenisa Bekele was. Um, I'll let other
He
people do
competed.
that. Now, his marathon record of pulling out of this, that, and the other, and doing this, and so the so-called greatest marathon, that's obviously gonna change the view of a lot of people about him. But he was not a guy who chronically dropped out back in the day in track races. He just crushed everyone, and was a 5'3" assassin. So that doesn't change my view of him in the 2000s. Now, yeah, in the last 10 years, it hasn't been so good. But my memory of my perception of him will always be based on what he did from 2003 to 2011. So, yeah. Other than that, though, yeah, not the best week for him. I'm sure it hurt more to pull out of the London race than it did to see another record go. I think once he saw the 12:35 happen, he probably thought, well, my 10,000 record's gone anyway. So, I don't know. I think he would recognize it's a little bit of a different era as well.
So he's got 8 golds and no world records now. No world records in the marquee events. Does his times, when you're comparing him to Farah, do his times now just get washed into, well, he didn't have the world record, so what does it really matter? Second all time versus whatever.
It is interesting how malleable our perception is of an athlete's career. It's like when a record happened, because you did always used to say, well, Bekele's got both world records. Can't say that now. I think
Farah's got more gold.
I think not to me, but yeah. I think to some people, his legacy has certainly taken a hit just based on the fact that, his records aren't that far off. They can be broken, actually, but not to me. He still has the reverence of somebody who had 2 world records for over a decade. And I still, let's put some respect on the man's name, and we'll wait till Cheptegei has compiled all those golds as well. Yeah, Farah has more golds, but Bekele is still better in my eyes than Mo Farah.
Interesting. Cheptegei's he's sitting at 1. So I mean, he's got to get at least more than 6, I think, to enter that conversation in the 5 and 10. He's got a great opportunity coming up because now we have championships in 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. This is when he needs to eat. These next 5 years is when he needs to go to town if he wants to. Yep, exactly. If he wants to get in that conversation, because you're right, the records are malleable, and that's what everybody tells you. It's just like you can't use that as you can't use that as the cornerstone for your greatest of all time argument, because pretty soon you're going to drop to 7th of all time. It might take one race and you get knocked down, but those championship titles, interesting. Yeah, Bekele only, if you want to split this up amongst 5 and 10, Bekele actually only had 2 5,000 meter titles in his entire career. The other 6 were in the 10,000. I'm not counting cross country, obviously.
Yeah, I think he won 1 billion titles in cross country, but that's also when they had the short distance or whatever it was, like the 4K as well. Yeah, 5,000 was tough to win there for a little bit, between El Garouge and I don't know who else was on the scene there for a while, but it's not. You look at his Till Estepaggia page, and it's very, very gold. It's a thick gold bar, but then you realize there are a lot of cross country titles in there. But Cheptegei will have a shot, at least in the long races, because that's all there is now. How many titles? Let's see. Does Bekele? He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, he's got a lot of cross country titles as well. He was the king of the short cross country gold and the long cross country gold for there for a while. They don't have the short, like I said, but Cheptegei will try to catch up in that regard too. He is a runner of the mold. He may even have a more diverse skill set than Bekele, because he's already doing road stuff as well. It's pretty crazy. He's going to try to trump the careers, I think, eventually of both Kenenisa Bekele and Eliud Kipchoge, if possible. He's got a ways to go for both, but these world records sure are a nice start. And now he's going to take on the world half title. And if he loses in the world half, he's washed. So, I mean, that's just basically my expectations. So, no, I'm kidding.
Tirnish Tababa also has 8 golds. So
interesting.
Because there's a chance now, like we're talking about these next 5 years, there's a chance, obviously, in the 5 and 10 there for 10 golds, and we'll see do they get split up? Does one person dominate? Because you start getting some doubles there, and your total adds up real quick, because that's how math works.
Maybe Bekele will come back to the track. He's like the same age as Mo Farah. Maybe he'll just like, do I still got it? And he comes out and runs 28 flat. Oh crap, I don't have it anymore.
I don't know if you listened to did you listen to the preview podcast that Gordon and I did? Probably not. But
I didn't. No. Yeah.
I was clamoring in this women's 5 for a deeper field, because then we could have got some of these questions answered of how fast could Sifan Hassan do, because this year the women's 5 has been great between Obiri, Hassan doing the 1 hour stuff, Tirop was right with Obiri, Schweizer, and Houlihan.
Yeah.
You don't even need, Ayana would be great, Dababa would be great, but you could put 5 other people out there who have put times up this year in the 1420s and just said go for it, and that would have been an awesome battle. And then you really could have tested it. I mean, you would have not
But the
taken the
problem
result
is
seriously.
those athletes are, I mean, as you know, are not part of this in group, and I think that's a significant player here. You got to get a corporate sponsor. So the Bowerman athletes, they need to be Bowerman presented by Virgin Airlines or something, and Virgin will pay for these huge expenditures, right? There's a huge advantage for this group of in athletes, and that's why you didn't see, I think, any Helen Obiri or Sifan Hassan. They're not part of that group, so they need to get on it and figure out how they're going to try to, if records are important to them, which I assume they are going to happen. Because I think on the women's side, you see somebody like Gade break a world record, and suddenly for Helen Obiri, if you didn't know already, I can run a world record, and same obviously was Sifan Hassan, which we all knew. So I'm fascinated to see how these other women that are near her or have beaten her in the past respond, if they have that opportunity, because we know these record opportunities are few and far between. It's tough to get all this organized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of Bowerman, that made me think about that fast, crazy race, the 14:23 race for Houlihan, and then the 14:26. They got through 3,000 with a pacer, right? Am I remembering that correctly? Was it Quigley who got them through 3K? I'll look up the
Sounds
splits.
right. It's funny to think how low tech that was in comparison to this. It was like at a high school with just a teammate pacing and no wavelight technology and no hype to the extent of this. It had a full marketing arm behind it.
Okay, yeah. So
I don't know.
So Quigley, Hall, Cranny, Frericks. They had a group there through 3,000, and then Cranny got to 3,400. If I'm remembering this right, she got to the maybe 100 or 200 past that. She left Shelby with just over 1,200 to go. So would the lights have helped there? Do you think Shelby Houlihan with 1,200 to go would have been impacted by light? You think she would? You don't think she was just going all out at that point with 1,200? The pacing was perfect. You want me to read the split for you?
We've discussed before. I think
69, 70, 70, 70, 70, 70, 70, 69. Those were Cranny's splits with no lights. How would that have been any different if she had lights?
But
you can't get more perfect than that.
You think Gade is 17 seconds better than Shelby Houlihan in the 5,000? I think you crank it up a little bit more, they're going to run in the 14 teens, and you have if you have Beatrice.
Oh yes, they could. Yeah, they could have gone faster. Yeah, they could have gone faster, but the plan was just at that. Like if they locked her in at 68s, maybe she could have done it. But what I'm saying is they executed the plan that they had without lights. And they're benefiting from being in a group where you have 10 women who are ridiculously fast. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I don't think with 1,200 to go, having the light matters. I don't think with 1,200 to go, after you've run a series of 69s and 70s, I think you are locked in. You're not looking down at lights. You are just going as hard as you can to finish 5,000.
Well, let me put on my conspiracy hat. Maybe these lights are actually lasers that target your hamstrings and brush out some lactic acid. What do you think about that? Respond.
Finally, someone has the courage to bring that up. Yeah, I just think there's advantages here as well too. I mean, if you want to play that, will the Tirnish Dababa in 2008 have a team of women that were running 70 seconds with her through 3,400 meters? No, of course not. Of course not. She had to do 3.5 laps by herself at the end, and she had a teammate on her. She had a teammate there as well too. So
okay.
I don't expect to convince you. I think the only thing that's going to convince you is time. So I'll check in with you in a year, 2 years, depending on what the record is and what Gaudet has done. And I'm sure we'll both contort our arguments that confirm our prior viewpoints.
Mm.
See,
do you think that
this
just
proves all wrong.
last serious question? I mean, are the lights, are they going to become more prevalent, or are we just going to continue to see them at these types of settings? Like, is this going to be at every major event that we're going to, because these have really exploded, obviously, this year. We saw them a little bit last year, but now they're really, really becoming a big thing. Like, is this every Diamond League's going to have these? Like, what do you think as far as where do these lights go next?
I think these lights go back in the box, maybe in the attic next to the Christmas lights where everybody keeps their stuff in the off season. And then after that, I think we will see them in most Diamond Leagues. But I mean, are they going to put them in a race when the goal time is 13:05 for the men? Like the 5,000, the goal is 13:05. Like maybe just to help the Pacers. Just yeah. So I think we'll see them at Diamond Leagues. I mean, if there's record attempts, obviously. But I do think if there's someone going for a national record, right, in front of their home crowd, and they're watching it, it's going to help them view it. I don't know. What do you think? You do not think that they're going to do it? You know, say the pre-classic next year wants the men's 10,000 at 27 flat pace. Do you think they'll have the lights go 27 flat just to help the pacer out? And make sure
No, I don't think. See, I'm just trying to figure out. Maybe we're just being too, single-minded about this. Like, there's got to be a way to incorporate them, because it's not going to be everyone. Like, hey guys, we have the lights, so I know you wanted this to be more tactical, but we're going to need you to try to break a world record every time out. No, it can't. Like, obviously, can't be like that. But it also doesn't make sense for this company to really start to. Yeah,
I'm just saying, anytime there's Pacers, they're going to put the lights, that if they have them.
And maybe they do it for like
hand-to-hand.
Gordon's favorite meet record. Maybe they dial it up for a meet record every time, so we can like say like, this is the fastest mile that's ever been at the pre-classic, so this is 3:47 pace. I don't know. I just don't believe that this company's developing this, and obviously it's not just track and field. I assume that this wave light technology is building products for, but I just don't believe that it's just going to be like, oh, 1 or 2 meets a year, we're going to have a world record attempt and we'll be able to utilize the lights. I think they're going to find creative ways to incorporate them that aren't just dependent on world records.
We saw that already. Didn't we see that with didn't they have them in Doha? There was one where the lights got the win, I remember, and it wasn't a world record attempt. It was
good year for the light.
Just like
season best for the light.
It was maybe it was a European record or an Aussie record or something. I don't know. I'm forgetting. Maybe it was just a meet record.
I mean, I just think anytime in the sprints, it'd be cool in the sprints if they were like, all right, here's the 100. We know no one's going to run 9:58, but we're going to have the lights go 9:58 pace. That would be cool. I think I would watch that, and it would just go away, and it would, as soon as it crossed the finish line, it would turn off, and so no one would. It'd be like a little sidebar. It'd be like, did the lights, did you see the light at all? And it's like, no, I was running 9:75. I didn't see the lights. Of course, I don't know. I just think there's more ways to do this.
To me, that would ruin the integrity of sprinting, because everybody knows the one thing keeping people from breaking Usain Bolt's time is they just don't know how to pace the 100 very well.
Yeah,
and the light would totally ruin it.
Yeah,
I think the more I think about this, though, I just believe that anytime there's going to be pacers, they're going to be lights, because then they don't need to worry about everything going wrong, and they don't need to worry about people complaining, hey, I went to this meet to run this time. Why did I not get this time? Oh, it's because there's been some really bad rabbiting. So they're going to put it as much as they can in races where there's rabbit. So even if it's you're going after the Olympic standard or world standard, or like hey, we want this race to be fast. We want this to be a 3:35 race. They'll put the lights there so that the rabbit can make sure they don't go out in 52. That's what I think.
Okay.
I don't know. Not reporting that.
Not reporting. Well,
we got to get Bram Som on the pod. Let's get Bram Som to hear what he said.
Yeah, we do. We definitely need to figure this out. Maybe we need lights across the top of our screen here to tell me when to stop talking. I guess that'll do it for us today. Email the podcast. I'm sure there's a lot of people who just hated every single take I had today. Email the podcast, FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com. Hopefully we don't get angry email from the new women's 5,000 meter record holder about my perception of her record.
I believe in you.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you tomorrow.
for more incredible takes.